Well, I guess if you can't beat them, join them. That's the philosophy behind the New York Taxi Commission. Or what is it? The New York Taxi and Limousine Commission, I should say. So if you're not familiar with what's happening in New York, Uber has become they're calling it a problem over there for the taxi companies. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. Now, something that has to be kept in mind about New York is it's kind of not very... it's a land in and of itself. We'll put it that way. It likes to tout itself as being like, "Oh, look how American New York is," but really, it's kind of like a haven in and of itself. It's this weird sort of utopia for people who don't like any sort of freedom whatsoever, because there's regulation on table salt. There's regulation on the size of drinks you can buy. So I would not call New York a very free place. In fact, if there was an index of freest cities, which there may be, New York would probably be on the bottom of the list there. So as it is now, New York is kind of famous for having yellow cabs, right? Like yellow cabs are everywhere in New York. It's one of the most iconic things about New York is you go to New York City and you see yellow cabs all over the place. So it's sort of what we're used to, right? Like if I go to New York City, and I have, then you're used to seeing all the yellow cabs everywhere. It's just a ubiquitous thing. And that's being threatened now by Uber. Uber, of course, is the ride-sharing system whereby, say I have some spare time and I want to give somebody a ride, then I do that. It's pretty simple, actually. Well, according to The Verge, the introduction of Uber to New York City has destabilized the taxi industry. The value of medallions has been cut nearly in half, pushing medallion owners into financial distress. Now, that's another weird thing about New York is in order to be a taxi driver, you have to get what's called a medallion. Medallions are actually really, really expensive, and cabs, like a taxi license to own a taxi, is like $500,000. It's crazily expensive to own a taxi company in New York City. Reason being, New York City is really kind of oppressive, actually, when it comes to businesses. So if you own a taxi in New York City, you paid a lot of money for that taxi in New York City. And that's because in New York City, they're worried about congestion and flow of traffic and all these different things, because apparently the city thinks that it's its responsibility to work on traffic congestion and all that sort of thing. And it's really kind of odd, actually. Meanwhile, swaths of yellow cabs are now sitting idle as drivers are flocking to Uber because, for one, you don't have to get a stupid license to use Uber. And for another, you actually could get paid a bit more, and you could potentially actually get better money and work fewer hours working for Uber. So why wouldn't you do it, really? So in an attempt to fight back, a team of taxi industry veterans are rolling out their own app called Arrow. That's ARRO, which sounds like a program for middle-aged or disabled or retiring people. Are you disabled or retired? Join the ARRO. We guarantee benefits. That's what ARRO sounds like. And that's that's indicative of the broader idea of ARRO anyway, because it's life support for a dying industry, which is the taxi industry. Because why would you use taxis when you can use Uber? Like, why? I mean, seriously, why would you do that? It seems kind of silly to use a taxi company nowadays when Uber is so prevalent. And that's okay. See, it's hard to explain to people. And I know you get it, right? I mean, I know you get it because you're listening to Hot News Talk Radio. Obviously, we're one of the bastions of free market apologists right here on Hot News Talk Radio. We're all about free market stuff. So you probably get it already. But something that has to be kept in mind is, we run into people every day who just don't get it. Our whole argument about the free market and our whole argument about capitalism and how it's actually not bad, and how it's not just like, capitalism is not just Rockefellers sitting in their $4 million offices laughing about how much money they made, because those people probably exploited the system in the sense that the governmental systems that we have today actually helped them get to where they are now. So that's not really free market. That's more cronyism, and that's a totally different thing. But anyway, chances are you already get why taxis are obsolete. And it's okay that taxis are obsolete. That's the thing. Taxi companies can evolve and become a new cool thing, but for some reason, taxi companies really aren't trying to do that. And that's where things start to become problematic for them. And again, that's okay, because if you have a failing service, it should fail unless you can find a way to revitalize it. If the market doesn't want it, the market doesn't want it. Don't try to force it. It's simple as that. It's like, the saddle makers got all upset when the horseless carriage came around, because they said, "Oh man, when the horseless carriage becomes a thing and everyone has a horseless carriage, what are the saddle makers to do?" And so a bunch of saddle makers went out of business, and that's kind of okay, because that's just the nature of it. That's progress. That's how we move forward. In order to move forward, you have to leave some things behind, and taxis are one of the things we may have to leave behind. So Arrow is the new app that the New York Taxi Commission is trying out, as reported in Cranes, which I believe is like a market magazine. It works basically exactly the same way Uber does, but it allows users to hail a cab without the $2 fee charged by the Uber T service. Cabs also allow users to avoid surge pricing, which can double or triple fares during peak hours in Manhattan. Arrow's founders argue that their system will be more appealing because it's directly integrated with the payment terminal in the taxi, as opposed to working through the driver's smartphone. That seems like a weak line of reasoning, since both apps provide a seamless way to hail and pay once a credit card has been entered. Arrow will launch 7,000 taxis compared to Uber's more than 20,000 cars. And for now, I should say, Arrow works only in New York City, although it has ambitions to expand to other cities. That's competition, though. That's good. That's what should have happened in the first place, instead of trying to fight it on a governmental level. You see, that's the thing that happened here, actually, in Chattanooga. And that's where a lot of people, well, two of us here at this station, Mr. Tulis, David Tulis of Nooganomics.com previously, and me, we were both making the same argument, which was, why are these taxi companies working to fight it on a bureaucratic level instead of working to fight it on a market level, which would be the smart thing to do? Launch an app. You know, there are people around here who would be more than happy to take your money to build an app for you that could compete with Uber locally. And people might actually want to do that instead of Uber. But for some reason, that didn't really happen. And instead, a lot of the taxi companies here looked to the city council to try to fix their problems for them. And that's where things started to get kind of, well, corrupt, to put it in frank terms. It became corrupt. And that's where we start to have problems, is when instead of working to compete yourself or with your own business, you look to the government. And that's the cheap way out when it comes right down to it. That's really just the cheap way out. It's like, man, my business is failing. Government, help me. That's not how you do it. I mean, come on. What if I was selling, say, apples, and suddenly people said, man, I'm sick of these apples. I want to buy oranges instead. And I said, man, that's not fair. The government should give incentives to people to buy apples instead of oranges. You know, what sense does that make? It's ridiculous. It's just people don't want what I'm selling. And that's just the market. And I accept that. But I know it's hard if you run a business and your business is failing. I know that's hard. And it's not something that we ever want to deal with. I mean, come on. I work in radio. Talk about businesses that are not extremely popular at the moment, right? So it's not like I'm any stranger to that idea. But really, it's just, that's the market. That's just how it works. We keep ourselves relevant. Like, imagine if we here at Hot News Talk Radio, instead of trying to keep ourselves relevant by having a website, we're on the TuneIn Radio app. We're going to have our own app at some point. We're on Twitter, you know, all these different ways you can get to us here on Hot News Talk Radio to keep ourselves relevant. Instead of doing that, what if we went to the government, say the FCC, and said, man, we should get incentives for people to listen to us instead of listen to those crazy internet podcast things? You know, why would we do that? That would make no sense. It's silly. That would be very corrupt of us, and we would not do such a thing, which is why we keep ourselves relevant instead of relying on the government to keep us relevant, because I don't trust the government to keep us relevant anyway, to be quite frank. So this is a sizable market for Arrow that Arrow could potentially improve upon. Again, that's the app that the New York taxi companies are working on launching to compete with Uber. There are 500,000 trips in yellows and greens every day. They're referring to the different types of cabs. Says Mike Epley, director of product management at Arrow. That's what he told Cranes. Some of those trips go smoothly and some of those don't, but it will be tough going against Uber, a company with $5 billion in funding and the political muscle to overmatch even New York City's mayor. And that would be pretty funny, actually, if the New York taxis just sort of disappeared in favor of Uber. I mean, that would be such a dramatic and radical shift. How long have New York taxis been around? Yellow cabs. How long has yellow cab been around? Years, probably close to 100 years now. Ever since the automobile became a thing, there was the yellow cab, it seems like. So just in the space of 2 or 3 years, Uber comes around and totally kicks them off the throne. That would be an amazing display. And it's a warning as well, how you must stay relevant. That's imperative that you stay relevant with your business. If you get all cozy, you get your blanket and you're snuggled up next to the fire and you're all cozy, then you're bound to fail in the marketplace. You have to keep moving. And unfortunately, businesses like Yellow Cab don't want to keep moving until just recently with this Arrow app launching. And it's so frustrating to me that we keep having things like this happen. It's it's the worst when things like that happen. And then they complain to the government saying, please help us, we're failing. Why are we failing? Well, it's because you're not staying relevant. You have to stay relevant if you have a business. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere and we are relevant. You can listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and then search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off now if you go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio is saving you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We also have a ton of great programming here on Hot News Talk Radio, and we're not just about the it's hard to explain really. What is it? It's the old way of programming, right? It's not really the programming, but it's the content. Because we're fresh, we're relevant, we're keeping it real here at Hot News Talk Radio. It used to be, actually, no, I still am younger. It used to be that we just old people on the radio, right? Like you listen to radio, and most of the time you heard older people anyway. Like you heard people who were 50 and up, and that's most of the radio show hosts these days. And we're working to change that because I'm young. I'm not even 21 yet, so I can't legally buy a drink, which is really stupid, actually, and that should be changed very quickly, at least before the year is up. That should be changed. Before June the 15th of next year, they should change that. But anyway, we also have a lot of great young programming here on Hot News Talk Radio as well. Like, well, me, I don't want to tout myself, but I am the #1 show host here on Hot News Talk Radio. We also have, of course, Clutch with Keon Rose, young guy, really, really smart when it comes to sports. At least I think he is, because I don't know anything about sports, and he may actually be the worst at sports, and I have no idea. But I think he's really good at sports, and his show is Clutch with Keon Rose, which is on every weekday right here on Hot News Talk Radio. Currently, he's filling the slot for Tex. He's out cattle wrangling, I think is what you call it, and he's on from 6 to 7 usually. But in his absence, we have Clutch with Keon Rose here on Hot News Talk Radio. We are very happy to have him. We have the Eric Judd Show, which you may have heard. We were talking about drone farms and the dangers of drone farming and how you must take care of your drones. I run a drone farm, actually. Me and my life partner, we've been working on drones and drone farming, and we're about drone outreach more than anything. We're about keeping these drones alive, and we take in battered drones. We take in drones that have not really been taken care of properly, and we help to rehab them and then make them good again so that they can operate as they were before. And my drone farm has been running for about a week now. And we've been very happy about the results of our drone farm. So we're very happy about how we've been able to raise these drones to be the best that they can be. And then, of course, we make sure that they're pedigree drones. These are full purebred drones. And if there are families who are looking to adopt a drone, we certainly are looking at options. You can call us at 423-800-8949. Something that we are not in favor of, though, at my drone farm is the weaponization of drones. These drones are innocent creatures, and they should have nothing at all to do with warfare or anything at all to do with subduing perps. That's not what we're about at my drone farm. However, the cops are very violent people, and the police are wanting to have the capability to take control of driverless cars. And in North Dakota, they're also wanting to fire bullets, not bullets, actually, in this case, they're wanting to fire projectiles of pepper spray and all sorts of horrible, noxious things from the air. And really, cops shouldn't have that power, but for some reason, the cops have more power than the average smart person, and so we have this problem here. In North Dakota, there's a new law that's permitting North Dakota cops to fly drones around that could fire beanbag rounds out of the air. Now, when I say beanbag rounds, you might think that a drone fires a beanbag and I start kicking it around and saying, "Thanks, dude." No, not that kind of beanbag. The kind of beanbag that leaves a giant welt on your chest because you were protesting the abuse of drones. Legal experts are very concerned that a new North Dakota law, which allows law enforcement drones to be armed with so-called less than lethal weapons, including stun guns and beanbag rounds, could be highly problematic. Yeah, no kidding. Problematic would be a light way to put it, very gentle way to put it. The new law, however, explicitly forbids lethal weapons, so that's good. They won't be firing Mel Gibson out of drones at me. No, they won't be firing lethal weapons, so we, hopefully anyway, not anytime soon, won't be hit by a round of 40 Smith & Wesson while driving down the street because I was mistaken for a very famous drug dealer, which has happened before, actually. I was shot because I was mistaken for a drug dealer. I'm sorry that I deal in drones on the street. Previous drafts of the bill specifically included prohibitions on non-lethal weapons as well, but that language was later removed. So, unfortunately, in North Dakota, the law enforcement can have drones, and they can also have non-lethal weapons strapped to these drones. So if you're walking down the street, you could potentially be tased by a drone, or you could potentially be tased by or hit by a beanbag gun, or sprayed with pepper spray because you were resisting something that wasn't there just a few seconds ago. Among other reasons, such weapons have been shown that they can, in fact, kill people. According to research that was done by The Guardian, 39 Americans have died this year at the hands of police wielding a taser. Meanwhile, the Associated Press reported on Wednesday that more than 20 North American cities are pursuing large silicone-based, I should say, projectiles that are yet another alternative weapon. So you can be shot with fake breasts, I would assume. Very large silicone weapons. They'll hurl them at you as you're walking down the street. Well, at least it's the same material. The Peace Garden State has become something of a hub for drone research and development. It offers a bachelor's degree in unmanned aerial systems. And as the University of North Dakota, while the state's Air National Guard hosts a number of MQ-1 Predator drones, the state also hosts the country's only Federal Aviation Administration-approved drone testing site that can fly both during the day and at night. So it takes a very subtle situational awareness to understand when it's okay to use less than lethal, says Ryan Kahlo, a law professor at the drone expert at the University of Washington. That's what he told Ars Technica. It's amazing to me that we have a drone expert already, when the idea of drones is actually kind of a new one as of maybe 10 years or so ago. So now we have drone experts that have sort of popped out of the woodwork. Maybe I could register as a drone expert. Is there any sort of registration or qualification to be a drone expert? I actually kind of doubt it. So he's a self-proclaimed drone expert. The problem is that it will be used too often because the perception that stakes are not very high. What? Because there is a perception anyway that stakes are not very high because sometimes less than lethal can be lethal, he says. So it strikes me, he says, that putting less than lethals on drones creates a double remove. The officer doesn't have the situational awareness, and they don't know whether a conversation could de-escalate. So that's one thing. And the second is the fact that it's less than lethals will mean that police will hesitate less and use them more often, kind of like tasers, where not too long ago we had a huge problem with cops using tasers on basically everyone until they started actually doing training. So if your grandma got pulled over and she sneezed and startled the cop, he would tase her, and then you'd have thankfully she'd have a heart attack during that time and then would be defibrillated by the taser. So maybe it was actually a blessing in disguise. But anyway, it was a very, very poor idea to give less than lethal weapon, or actually I would say any weapons to police, but I'm a little bit biased against them. You see, the problem here is, and he's absolutely right about the double remove. The first remove is that you're flying a drone, so you feel less connected to the actual emotional level of this interaction. And the second remove is using less than lethal weapons, so people will think, well, I can use less than lethal weapons, and there's a very low chance that it will kill them, so that's okay. So maiming is okay, but killing is not. So that's good that we have that idea in our heads. And then so the North Dakota cops flying these drones around, and there will be some guy, oh, that's the guy who stole the moose there, and they shoot him with a beanbag and knock him in the noggin, and now, like Goliath, he is felled and dead, and the cop will probably get paid leave. So we'll have situations like that on the rise if we allow the cops to use drones. And that's the key phrase that has to be known there, is if we allow cops to use drones. If we allow cops to use drones, because a significant protest could stop cops from using drones. Well, plus there is, drone shotgun rounds that they sell now that are specifically designed to shoot down drones. So that's another option as well, is if you see a drone flying over your property, you could simply fire a round of number 2 birdshot or something like that at this drone, and it'll, hit the ground. But ensure that drone is not one of my peaceful drones from my drone farm, because I have had a problem with them getting loose, and then I have to catch them with a big old drone net. And so please, these drones are very peaceful that I use. The ones that the cops use, however, are not so much, because they're probably spying on you and looking through your daughter's window with its 4K camera. So look out for police drones. They're very naughty, and they probably will eventually anyway have weapons mounted on them. So you definitely don't want to have to deal with that situation, a weaponized drone flying around your yard, taking pictures of your cat and then shooting your dog. So you don't want to have to deal with that. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone, and then search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And again, coming up after this show is Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity, and of course, Hot News Live at 5 and Clutch with Keon Rose. All right here, Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. And of course, on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone as well.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of the
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Authorities still looking into the background of Vester Flanagan, who killed two Virginia TV journalists yesterday. Don Schaefer, his former boss at the Tallahassee TV station, says he had to fire him
for bizarre behavior and fighting with other employees. He threatened to punch people out, and he was kind of running fairly roughshod over other folks.
Flanagan killed himself before capture. A new Quinnipiac poll shows Hillary Clinton's lead among Democratic presidential hopefuls has slipped from 55 to 45%.
Clinton also edges out the top Republican candidates in potential head-to-heads, but does not run as well against the man not in the race, Vice President Joe Biden. The survey shows Biden tops Republican frontrunner Donald Trump by 8 points. He would also beat Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio.
Fox Radio's Jared Alpern. A county clerk in Kentucky has again refused to issue a gay marriage license to a couple, despite a federal order to grant licenses for same-sex unions. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Well, we've had quite a bit of problems actually with cops recently, and that's not to say that cops themselves are bad. No, it's actually the system behind them that's terrible. It's like I say, a person is smart. People are stupid. You see, that's how it usually works. Mob rule is really, really dumb. In fact, this is a really, really odd topic to bring up, but I was looking at a study that a particular university did. I think it was Cornell, I want to say, that did a study of mosh pits at different concerts. I forget the name because I haven't been to one in forever. At particular concerts, and it turned out that people in mosh pits will act very similarly to gases interacting with each other. So mosh pits are extremely predictable, just like mobs are. And so we have that same problem with people, where people are extremely predictable, but a person isn't always. The way people will react to things is extremely predictable, but the way a person will react to things is not at all. And so we have a broad system behind the police force that's not very good, whereas a individual cop can be very nice and a very good person, but the police system as a whole, not so much, because then you have to deal with problems of police unions and other such things that are really not something you want to have to deal with. Well, now the cops are wanting to get control over your car. Yeah. So now the question is being posed. Should the police have the capability to take control of driverless cars? Well, that leads to some interesting problems and actually some interesting solutions as well. Now, on the one hand, let's fill ourselves in on what driverless cars are. Google is working presently on driverless cars, which are little cars that'll drive around without drivers. They're computer controlled. So a traffic cop, say in need of in the event of an emergency, may need to stop a driverless car that otherwise wouldn't. So we can see a positive aspect to that, and that's great. That's cool. Well, driverless cars may be the norm someday, sooner than we think, actually, according to Ars Technica. So it's never too early to consider futuristic scenarios of a driverless car world. Kind of like in Minority Report, if you've seen that movie, where everyone is driving in these weird sort of cars that are always on tracks, sort of like in Minority Report. That could be the very near future for us, potentially, where none of us actually own cars. We simply have a car terminal that we hop into and speeds off to the designated location within 30 minutes or less, kind of like an Amazon-led thing. So they've already been, have already been, I should say, plenty of ethical questions asked, like whether a driverless car should decide who lives or who dies during an accident scenario. One question often posed is whether a driverless vehicle would choose to ram a school bus full of kids or sacrifice the driverless vehicle's occupants during a mishap. Lots of different questions are being asked about driverless cars and the safety that is well, a little bit questionable, right? Like we have different safety precautions that are a little bit questionable with driverless cars, where driverless cars may make the computationally correct decision, but not the emotionally correct one. And that's where things start to get a little bit weird, because our first instinct is save the bus full of kids, but the computer will calculate that there will be fewer casualties if I ram this bus full of kids. And so that's where things start to get, well, a little bit weird. Oh, also, we just got a question over Twitter. You can tweet me at Mechakeller on Twitter. So I would encourage you to do so. The question is, how can I overclock my Xbox so that it is better than a PC? Well, if the PC in question is a compact Presario from 2005 or so, then it would be quite easy. But an Xbox cannot really be better than a modern gaming PC. I'm sorry. Also, Xboxes are not designed to be overclocked. So please, I beg you, don't do that, because you'll end up burning up your Xbox and probably your house too. Of course, I know that question was a joke anyway, but it's still pretty funny. So now the RAND Corporation is thinking about how law enforcement officials could deal with driverless cars. A recent study by the group, I should say, at RAND Corporation ponders whether a cop should have the ability to remotely control a vehicle to pull it over. There are a few ways that this could happen. For starters, vehicles could have a method for police to take control baked in at the start. Or maybe the police would have a kill switch, one authorized or not. We all know that the vehicles are susceptible to hacking, as our Seneca reported earlier. Now, the problem with that, of course, is cops are human. And just as humans are good, humans are also kind of terrible too. So we don't necessarily want some rogue cop, as they like to put it, taking control of a driverless car so that he can have a joyride or something silly like that. I mean, we don't know yet. That's the weird thing. Driverless cars are not not as prevalent as they will be in the future, unless some crazy ban pops up or something like that. But as it is now, we don't really know what could happen with driverless cars when it comes right down to it. So we don't know all the solutions that could, or scenarios that could happen when a driverless car goes on the loose and a cop has to stop it or perceives that he has to stop it. So either way, this is going to be a real world debate pretty soon. According to Ars Technica, the RAND Corporation doesn't really come to any conclusions, but does briefly touch on the future of unmanned vehicles by painting a hypothetical scene that seems scary to grasp, but doesn't seem very far-fetched at all. And it's a not long, but it's a short story that's a few paragraphs long that you can read on Ars Technica. So if a police officer can command a self-driving car to pull over for his own safety and that of others on the road, can he do the same if he suspects that the passenger is committing a crime or has committed a crime? And what if the passenger doesn't want the car to stop? Can he or she override the command, or does a police officer have the ultimate control? Aremus asks. Well, you would have to look at the legalities of it, and I am by no means a constitutional expert when it comes to law. But the cop would have to present probable cause in order to pull over a vehicle. That's already apparent. So if there is probable cause to pull over a vehicle, then the vehicle could be pulled over just like any regular vehicle. So we'd have to see about that. It's interesting. It's a topic that really does need to be up for debate. You know, it's something that has to be talked about. But fortunately, we have a little while before this becomes a real thing that has to be looked at immediately. On the other hand, putting things off is not really a good idea when it comes to tech solutions, so we'll just have to see what solutions are brought forth. If you want my take on it, and you probably don't, but if you want my take on it, I think that this should be handled just like a regular pullover should be. So if a cop, say, puts on his lights behind a vehicle, or of course a sheriff's deputy as well, puts on his lights behind a self-driving car, then the self-driving car can enter into an automatic pullover sequence or whatever they want to call it. So that makes sense to me. Just as a regular person should pull over if there are flashing lights behind him, then a self-driving car should as well. So that kind of makes sense to me. Car chases would, of course, be negated in the event of a self-driving car being used, because a self-driving car probably wouldn't want to get into a high-speed chase with the police, like we just had through Hamilton County not too long ago, just a few hours ago, actually. So I don't know. Self-driving cars being a hazard, I don't really see them as being any more of a hazard than a regular vehicle is, because after all, we all know that cars are hazardous for your health. Well, a license plate reader apparently led police to the man who killed the reporter and the cameraman from WDBJ Channel 7, our CBS affiliate up in Virginia. The man who authorities said infamously killed 2 Virginia television journalists on Wednesday was tracked down by the police via license plate reader technology, according to law enforcement. A Virginia state trooper told a news conference on Wednesday that she hit Vester Lee Flanagan's plate number on her first try along Interstate 66 around 11:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As soon as it was entered, she says, I came up with a positive hit that vehicle just passed me less than 3 minutes earlier, she says. I let my dispatch know that the vehicle had passed me, and I attempted to catch up with the vehicle, which was traveling eastbound on Interstate 66. Moments later, police tried to stop the Chevrolet that the man was driving, and the vehicle drove off the road and crashed, and the suspect, who also went by Bryce Williams as his stage name, was discovered to have shot himself. He then later died of those self-inflicted injuries. So, Sergeant Rick Garlitz of the Virginia State Police says that license plate readers are a great tool. It helped in that case to identify that vehicle. Now, that's where things have to be recognized, is that case with that vehicle. This was a situation where more people could be in imminent danger, right? Like, we have a situation now where pretty much anyone's going to agree that this car posed the person in this car posed an immediate danger to people around him, because he's obviously not acting rationally and he's swerving around. They said that they got in a bit of a chase with him. All sorts of different things were going on with this car on I-66. Plus, who knows where he was going and what he was going to do. So you can understand the dilemma. So that's one very slim situation where I can understand a license plate reader being used, but that's a very, very, very specific incident where a license plate reader could be used. And it does sort of make sense from law enforcement perspective, where they're looking at different license plates, and if one is a fugitive, then they go after that one. It makes sense. But on the other hand, it's kind of an invasion of privacy. So you have to sort of balance that invasion of privacy with what some would say is public good. Then you have to ask the question, what determines public good? And it becomes a really big debate, actually. Should the police be using license plate readers in these scenarios? I'm kind of on the fence about it. Now, on the one hand, we all recognize that this led to the capture, or at least it led to the detainment of someone who was going to die anyway, but it led to this person being found and pulled over and he died, all these different things. So it led to that happening, which most of us will recognize as a positive thing. But on the other hand, if we're talking about a broader scenario where it's just someone who's looking for, say, a stolen car, or someone who's a cop who's looking for people who are speeding, constantly logging every single license plate, that leads to be kind of problematic, actually, because now we're talking about invasion of privacy. Whereas if somebody is, we're talking about a manhunt, so that's a whole nother situation than just people driving down the street in a regular everyday thing where somebody's been pulled over. So it's, you know, this license plate is logged now. And then it becomes a question, do you actually own your license plate? Is the license plate actually the property of the city or municipality from which you received it? That leads to a whole bunch of other questions too. So it's a very big, very, very big topic of license plate readers and when they should be used and how they can be used and actual proper ways to use license plate readers. So in my humble opinion, license plate readers should only be used in the case of a fugitive on the run. That would be the only scenario where you would use a license plate reader to capture somebody, because that is a threat to everyone. A person on the run who's obviously armed and dangerous. That's one scenario. And that's the only one I can really see where license plate readers should be used. And then again, there could be alternatives that we simply don't know about at this point. So it's one very specific point where we can see license plate readers being used in a positive way. The problem is, whenever you put a tool in the hands of tyrants, they're going to way overstep their bounds. And we are seeing that with license plate readers, where now in California, we're seeing people who are wanting to mount license plate readers on garbage trucks, not just police vehicles, but garbage trucks, so they can better capture every single person's license plate reader or license plate information and where they are at all times. Because we're not talking about just capturing license plate information just to have license plate information so there's an index. There's already an index of every license plate and who that car is registered to. That already exists. It's called the license plate system. That's why there is a license plate system in the first place. We're talking about real-time, or at least close to real-time, location tracking information. We're talking about data of where these cars are regularly parked. So if you have a police cruiser that drives through a neighborhood, it's pinging all those different license plates and picking up that information, whose car this is, where it is, all these things are logged. So that's not really a positive use of that technology, because now we're seeing people's privacy being very obviously invaded, and we definitely don't want that. So just as it's only a tool, we can see positive usages of it and we can see negative usages of it. So the one positive usage that we've seen in recent times is the tracking down of this person's car who was an armed, dangerous fugitive. And we also have a situation where this device was used to track people who are not armed, dangerous fugitives, just regular everyday people like you or I. So, or like you or me, I should say, if we want to be literate about it. I know I get, well, that's a topic for another day. Literacy is something that I'm working on. Fortunately, I'm blessed to work with somebody who is a former newspaper editor. His name is David Tulis. His show is on every weekday here from 9 to 11 on Hot News Talk Radio. He talks about local economy and free markets right here on Hot News Talk Radio. And he's also extremely literate. This is a very well-read man, David Tulis, here on Hot News Talk Radio. My mother, just fun little fact, my mother got a degree, well, almost got a degree, I should say, in English. And she was a writer, a typesetter, so she knows quite a bit about the English language. So I got a lot of that grammatical stuff nailed in my head when I was a kid. And I'm still getting it nailed in my head as an adult now from David Tulis. And I do appreciate it a lot, because everyone's English can be improved. And mine certainly can be. So I'm very appreciative of the hard work that he puts into teaching me English the proper way here at Hot News Talk Radio. And if you want to hear someone speaking English the proper way, listen to the David Tulis Show from 9 to 11 right here, Hot News Talk Radio. Well, if you were a Dish or are a Dish customer, although you might have been previously due to this blackout, you may have canceled your subscription due to this blackout. But if you were previously a Dish subscriber, you may have noticed there was a huge blackout of different Dish channels on Dish Network. And fortunately, we are not on TV, so we didn't have any problems with that. But well, some different news channels actually here in our local area were blacked out due to this failure of Dish. So now this has changed. The blackout of Dish channels has ended today. Following an emergency meeting at 8 p.m., Dish and Sinclair agreed to put the stations back on the air while they continued to negotiate. And of course, Channel 9 here in our local area is with Sinclair, and a few other stations are as well. So Dish Network said that its customers were experiencing the largest blackout in U.S. television history, all because of a money dispute between Dish and Sinclair Broadcast Group. 129 stations in 36 states and Washington, D.C. went dark yesterday, which was yesterday afternoon, affecting about 5 million Dish customers. Overall, Sinclair owns or operates 153 stations, with 87 of them being affiliates of the 4 major broadcast networks, being CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox, meaning customers lost access to local and national news programming, as well as sports carried by those stations, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, a little bit of explanation. News stations, or rather TV stations, kind of work the same way as radio stations, where there'll be a big conglomerate that owns a bunch of different radio stations, or TV stations in this case, and then they'll be affiliated with a broader network. So, like, for instance, we're independent here on Hot News Talk Radio. We're not owned by any conglomerate or any big group. We're very independent. We can say whatever the heck we want. We can say that Fox is bad, or CBS, or whatever. We can pretty much say whatever we want, and we don't have to worry about some corporate guy coming down and telling us to knock that off. We don't have to worry about that here at Hot News Talk Radio, because I know the owner personally, both of them, and I know everything. Well, not everything, but I know a little bit about the inner workings of the station, and so I'm probably not going to get criticized for different things that I say. And we say some pretty radical stuff here as well. Now, we're not owned by a big conglomerate, but different TV stations and different radio stations in our area are. And so there was a dispute between Dish Network and Sinclair. Now, Sinclair is huge. Sinclair owns dozens of different radio stations and TV stations all over the United States, including some locally here. So if you're a Dish subscriber, you may have actually lost service to one of these stations just recently, thanks to this deal or lack of deal between Dish and Sinclair. So Sinclair is the nation's largest broadcast group, according to the FCC, with almost 14 million subscribers. Dish is the second largest satellite TV provider after the AT&T-owned DirecTV. Dish/Sinclair's dispute is over the retransmission consent, which cable or satellite providers pay for the right to air TV stations. Sinclair noted that these channels can also be watched for free with an antenna, but for now they won't be seen on a Dish system. So if you're missing your different stations here in the local area, or you were, there's always the option to use it to collect it over the air. You can get a digital antenna receiver box, and actually your smart TV has them built in already, so you can pick up over-the-air transmissions. It's a much easier way to listen to us. Dish and Sinclair blamed each other for the dispute, with Dish asking the FCC to intervene in its favor. Dish claims that it has agreed to rates and terms with Sinclair for carriage of local stations, but Sinclair won't compete, or rather won't complete the deal, unless Dish also agrees to terms and conditions for future carriage rights of cable network that Sinclair does not yet own, it says. So the FCC, I guess, stepped in, but no, there was an agreement made between Dish and Sinclair, so everything's hunky-dory. But if you were wondering why you had an outage, if you're a Dish subscriber, that was why. Well, also, by the way, there is a bit of a meeting about Lieutenant Commander Tim White on September the 2nd, which is a Wednesday at noon, in front of the Solomon Building downtown. We're going to be carrying live coverage of that here on Hot News Talk Radio. So that's September the 2nd, which is a Wednesday, and you can hear coverage of that here on Hot News Talk Radio. You can also attend, bring a few of your friends if you want to. That's a march in support of Lieutenant Commander Timothy White here on September the 2nd, which is a Wednesday at noon, in front of the Solomon Building downtown. And we'll be covering that live here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 as well. So Ashley Madison is facing a proposed class action lawsuit over half-deleted data. A proposed class action lawsuit has been filed in California on behalf of Ashley Madison users who had their personal information leaked, including those who paid for the site, which actually they paid a fee to the site for a full delete of their data. So yeah, after breach of the news database, or rather the site's database, people combing through the information found that Ashley Madison and other properties were owned by a parent company called Avid Life Media, or ALM, that retained quite a bit of information pertaining to users who purchased a full delete of their profile for $19. So if you pay for a full delete of your profile on Ashley Madison, it's not actually going away, and you pay $20 for nothing, basically. This includes GPS coordinates, date of birth, gender, ethnicity, weight, height, and several other details as well. Although email addresses, phone numbers, and descriptions written by users who sought full deletes were eliminated by the time the hackers accessed the database. The incidental data that Ashley Madison kept on those users could still paint quite a picture. The register has a table that nicely illustrates what information Ashley Madison kept on deleted users and what it actually did delete. Still, though, the word full implies full, as in complete, nothing left over. And so paying for a full delete for $20 and then not getting it seems kind of, well, again, problematic. In addition, when Chattanooga investigated the full delete option on Ashley Madison about a year ago, before this whole leak thing happened, they found out that there was just a tiny bit of difference between a full delete and the hiding your profile option, except that messages that a user sent to another user would still be deleted if existing users paid the fee. So you could get your messages deleted if you wanted to for $19. The complaint alleges that among the data compromised and downloaded were profiles of individuals who executed the option to scrub their user profiles and all associated data and paid $19 to defendants to do so. Yet defendants, referring to Ashley Madison, failed to actually scrub the data. This, the plaintiffs say, violated the California Consumer Records Act by keeping users' personal data within its custody and control longer than necessary, and by failing to properly and adequately dispose or make users' data indecipherable. The plaintiff's lawyers also accuse Ashley Madison and Avid Life Media of failing to notify its customers of the data breach in a timely manner. So most of the people who had their information taken probably heard about it from the news, or even possibly here on Hot News Talk Radio as well, which leads to quite a few problems. The claims of the other members of the class exceed $5 million exclusive of interests and costs, the lawyers added. Lawyers in New York and Missouri have also tried to organize class action lawsuits against Ashley Madison in the wake of the breach, but the outcomes of those suits are far from certain at this point. So lots of backlash against Avid Life Media. Is Ashley Madison going to survive the year 2015? Possibly not. It may find some way to revitalize itself and become a new company somehow, but Avid Life Media is going to have a lot of work to do, especially the PR department. I can see people in PR working at Avid Life Media just pulling their hairs out and running around screaming, saying, there's no way we can fix all these problems. That's probably what's happening over at ALM, and I'm really not surprised to find that out, to be quite honest. Sites like Ashley Madison don't really scream reputable to me, and people who sign up for Ashley Madison, I don't want to say they got what's coming to them, although my emotional side wants to say that, but my privacy-minded side also says really the information should have been deleted if it was paid for to be deleted. So take from that what you will. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. You can download the TuneIn Radio app and then search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, where we are always tweeting all sorts of different things about the surrounding world. We're bringing you Chattanooga and the world here on Hot News Talk Radio, and we're going to be talking about a drone-killing laser cannon that's killing unmanned aircraft. We're going to be talking about that here on Hot News Live at 5, here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Again, get the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone, and you can listen to us streaming live anywhere in the world on your smartphone here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. Laura Ingraham is up next, and then Sean Hannity and Hot News Live at 5, and then Clutch with Keon Rose right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Looking good out there through the afternoon with some sunshine. A little warmer, highs near 85 tonight. Not as cool, lows lower to middle 60s. For Friday, Partly cloudy, continued dry, 85 to 87 with a few widely scattered showers and storms for the weekend. This forecast is brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Cops all across the country are cracking down on drunk driving, and there's one thing you can be sure of. They'll see you before you see them. Drive sober or get pulled over. And I'm WDEF News 12's Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece. Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece to the perfect affordable handcrafted gem. From just $20 silver earrings to your dream elegant work of art to adorn your finger, neck, and wrist, impressing your friends and family, Arnie Guest Goldsmith will ensure that your budget is met. Planning the perfect wedding or a special event? Then let Arnie Guest Goldsmith assist you in choosing or designing the keepsake that will last you a lifetime. All of Arnie Guest Goldsmith repairs and crafting are done in-house, so you can be rest assured that it will meet or exceed your expectations. For over 30 years, Arnie Guest Goldsmith has served Chattanooga with the finest jewelry and services, meaning only the highest quality and standards. So the next time you think of jewelry, custom design, remounting, appraisals, or repairs, remember Arnie Guest Goldsmith. And please visit Arnie Guest Goldsmith at 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. That's 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. Call 875-2390. That's 875-2390. Or go to jewelryfromscratch.com. That's all one word, jewelryfromscratch.com. Jewelryfromscratch.com. Arnie Guest Goldsmith of Chattanooga.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life. Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off.
It's time to show Iran that the American people stand united for Israel and against this nuclear deal.
An urgent message from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in Jerusalem. A dangerous nuclear agreement reached with Iran threatens the U.S., Israel, and the free world. Here's Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein on the danger.
Iran continues to wage war throughout the Middle East and terrorism. It supports terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, who continually threaten Israel with war.
Your voice is powerful and needed in the fight to protect the Judeo-Christian world from the terrorists who seek to destroy it. The Fellowship urges you to contact Congress today and ask them to say no to Iran nukes. Visit SayNoNukes.com to have your voice heard in Washington. That's SayNoNukes.com. The peace of Zion and Jerusalem depend on you. Thank you for taking action today.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingraham, David Tulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.